Wanda Maximoff. Whether she's manipulating the minds of heroes, villains, or entire towns, or just having really uncomfortable feelings about her brother, she is an endlessly fascinating Marvel character. So for this video, we're digging into all sorts of facts and deets that a lot of folks might just, not know about their favorite world-endangering sorceress.
Endless nothingness.
Now, this whole list is kinda aimed at those whose Scarlet Witch knowledge is based on the MCU, so what better place to start than with the backstory given to Wanda in the Marvel Cinematic Universe? See, it's a bit different from the comics, and fair enough, because even in the realm of comic book melodrama, Scarlet Witch is, well, she's confusing. For this entry though, let's just focus on the simple version. While in the MCU, Wanda and Pietro are the children of a Sokovian couple who were killed in an explosion, and Wanda's power source, thought at one time to be based in Hydra experimentation, is innate and yet to be fully explained. In the comics, well, the old backstory, again trying to keep this simple, is just that she and her bro are the children of super powerful mutant Magneto. More specifically, they grew up as the children of Django and Maria Maximoff, a Romani couple who would later be revealed as their maternal aunt and uncle. Now, we'll dig a bit more into that in a minute, but basically, while under the impression that these two were their parents, an angry mob burned down their caravan and seemingly killed Django and Maria, at least as far as Wanda and Pietro could tell. This being comics, the two people killed off-panel did not actually die, and it's a whole thing. Anyway, they wandered around the woods and junk before being approached by Professor X, whose invitation to join his school they then turned down. Shortly after, they were accosted by a mob who witnessed Wanda using her powers, and luck being what it is, they were saved by Magneto. Being grateful, they joined up with him and what would become the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. I appreciate Magneto's subtlety. So yeah, originally Scarlet Witch was an X-Men villain. Eventually though, they grew tired of the whole mutants fighting mutants thing and returned to Europe, where they essentially just lived as fugitives until they heard that a certain villain by the name of Hawkeye had been accepted by the Avengers. So they applied and became the second and third editions after the original roster. Now, stepping away from the origins for a sec, how about we discuss everyone's favorite topic, the body count? See, Scarlet Witch has killed a lot of people, and specifically she's killed quite a few Avengers, which, if you want to make the water cooler conversations a little more awkward, that's the way to do it.
It's probably just a case of the Mondays. Am I right?
Most notably, during Avengers Disassembled, she mind-controlled a magically enhanced She-Hulk into ripping Vision in half. Jesus. She also did a 2-for-1 and resurrected Jack of Hearts just to use his splody powers, which then re-killed him and in turn killed Scott Lang. She's also killed Hawkeye twice. He was erased from existence in House of M, and prior to that, in Disassembled, which I think I once called Civil War in maybe my Hawkeye video, for which I humbly apologize. I am an idiot. He was killed when a Kree invasion occurred, entirely fabricated by Wanda, and after he's fatally wounded from a whoopsie arrow explosion, he uses a Kree jetpack to take out a battleship. It's all very traumatic. And actually, as long as we're mentioning her kill count, for me, Wanda's most horrifying kills are the accidental ones from the ramifications of M-Day, which was the moment after House of M, when Wanda just kinda decided, hey, no more mutants. Literally, that's it. She says the line and poof, essentially all mutants across the globe lose their mutant abilities. For many, this was a pretty big deal, but for others, it was fatal. I'm not gonna dig into all of them, but Jeannie Martin, a character admittedly just created for this arc and only shown in the issue of her death, her mutant ability is just having a really strong neck, which is great because her neck is 1 meter long. On M-Day, she lost that strength and her neck broke, killing her. Obviously, I don't know what else would happen. It's a grotesque image and a perfect encapsulation of the Scarlet Witch's horrifying powers. In fact, Wanda Maximoff is often noted as the most powerful character in the MCU. And that makes perfect sense, as she is a pretty close representation of her comics counterpart, who is more powerful than the likes of Ego, Thanos, and there's even an argument to be made that she's more powerful than the Celestials, at least a few of them, although, that's like a whole other video to try and nail down. In the comics, characters like Death, Oblivion, the Fulcrum, they would all wipe the floor with Wanda, but they're also hella OT. Jean Grey, in the form of Dark Phoenix, would theoretically also be a threat, but again, it's not a definite W for either party. That all said, as can be seen when she gets briefly taken down by War Machine, hell, just that whole battle in general, the issue with Wanda is that she is extremely fallible in other ways. Still, when she puts her mind to it, and, you know, maybe goes a tad insane, she can easily be the most devastating force in the multiverse, which, yeah, I guess we'll see how all that pans out. Anyway, did you know that Wanda's also capable of Immaculate Conception? Of course you do. It's in WandaVision. But did you know how it happens? I mean, magic, obviously, but in the comics, it's a tad more complicated because, well, comics. That's how you get old baby arms over here. See, that's Master Pandemonium. He kidnaps Billy and Tommy at the behest of Mephisto in exchange for his lost limbs, which themselves just started out as one hand, then Mephisto replaced all of them, and then like, look, comics are silly. See, Billy and Tommy were created using fragments of Mephisto's soul, hence him taking and reabsorbing them into his being. This did result in him being defeated by Agatha Harkness because of how much the fragments had been changed, but like most of these entries, that's a whole nother can of worms. All of this drama led to Wanda creating a pocket dimension where mutants reign in House of M and eventually erasing 99.9% of all mutant kind. Needless to say, it would seem there are a lot of pieces already in place for a whole lot of multiversal and world-changing shenanigans. While the chance of Mephisto actually showing up is unlikely, I also wouldn't be terribly surprised or shocked if he wound up in Multiverse of Madness to help nudge the plot along and perhaps bring us the reincarnated Billy and Tommy. Back to Wanda's endlessly confounding backstory, did you know as a baby her nanny was a cow person named Bova? I shit you not, that is an actual thing that is in the comics, and it's not even the craziest part. See, Bova was the creation of the High Evolutionary. He was notable for lots of genetic experimentation, much of it involving human-animal hybrids a la a certain H.G. Wells character later played by Marlon Brando in Paleface. He is also responsible for the genetic experiments on Wanda and Pietro, which led to those around them believing the twins to be mutants. But back to the cow nanny. See, Bova is partially responsible for a lot of the confusion around the twins' birth. Basically, this chick Magda, who was married to Magneto, came to Mount Wundagore, the OG base of operations for the High Evolutionary and the home of Bova, where she supposedly gave birth to twins. However, these were actually twins abducted by the High Evolutionary, with baby Wanda imbued with power by the god Chthon as a future power play of his own. Now, he was under Mount Wundagore and he like battled the High Evolutionary. Anyway, Magda abandoned them due to the threat of their supposed father. The High Evolutionary then experimented on them and left them with the Maximoffs to raise as their own after losing their own children, Anna and Matteo. Hence the misconception that Wanda and Pietro were Magneto's children. In reality, they were originally taken from their mother, Natalia Maximoff, the previous Scarlet Witch. Bova also tried to pawn them off on the Wizard's wife, Madeline Frank, who had been the hero Miss America, but she died after her second child was stillborn. Sad. I guess the point of this entry is that A, there's a Nanny Cow out there yet to be mined for full comedic potential, and B, comics are really freaking weird. Okay, so eventually it was revealed that Magneto was not Wanda's real father pretty recently too, specifically issue 7 of Avengers and X-Men Axis in 2014. More recently, he was charged with Wanda's murder, although of course, it's more complicated than that. At one point, he confesses quite dramatically, but then Scarlet Witch shows up, but it's really a backup created in Krakoa, the mutant island nation, wherein they've figured out resurrection, and they fill in all her memories, and then like a bunch of kaiju attack. It's a whole thing. Also, I just realized I've never said Krakoa out loud, and I don't know if I'm saying it correctly. Anyway, Wanda eventually pulls herself together and accuses Toad of her murder, and he immediately admits guilt, which doesn't exactly sit well, and that's because in reality, it was all Wanda's doing. She was the mastermind the whole time.
It's always been me, the author of all your pain.
One extra bit of context for the Krakoa stuff, the whole Wanda's not a mutant thing came about due to the whole Disney-Fox battle over mutant characters, hence Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver showing up in the MCU prior to those companies merging. Within the comics, this led to Wanda's new nickname, the Pretender, so called because A, she took the identity of a mutant for so long, and for good reason, because it was freaking canon, and B, Chick took out almost all of mutant kind and sorta left a lot of folks with PTSD. She's a borderline uncontrollable force who time and time again brings horror to the world. Madness, if you will. Oh, also she stooped Hawkeye at one point after he returned from being wiped out of existence, which was on account of her. It was weird. Basically, she had no memory of what had happened, as she is wont to do, and was living in a sort of exile in Transia. At least that was the idea. Hawkeye wound up bumping into her, and then he just kind of kept bumping into her over and over again over the course of presumably a few minutes to an hour. But in Children's Crusade, it's revealed that this Wanda was actually a Doombot, much to Hawkeye's surprise. I guess that makes the situation better? And finally, with Multiverse of Madness coming out in May, it is worth noting that Wanda has not only encountered Doctor Strange before, she's also been beaten by him. In House of M, at the height of her madness, he used the Eye of Agamotto to stop her with a traumatic memory. With the events of WandaVision recalling several beats from that arc, and utilizing tons of other comic book moments, perhaps in Multiverse of Madness, we should also keep an eye on that eye.
What do you know about the multiverse?
Honestly, with how convoluted and bizarre her comics history is, we could pump out like 10 more of these, no sweat. But more importantly, I just can't wait for the High Evolutionary to show up so we can dig into that mess of a backstory. Dude once employed Miles Warren before he became Spidey Batty the Jackal, probably the most needlessly convoluted character ever.